I'm not sure.
A light crowd.
7 o'clock.
I don't think they can give it away anymore.
I don't know.
I
They
don't think
might
we could
change
have
the
any
rules. Just call
fewer people.
Rose.
We have one.
Just call the number.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. If you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Molly, if you could help me with the roll call, please.
Alderperson Henry.
Here.
Barrand. Valdy. Oh, Barrand.
It's 7:01.
And Jim's in blue.
You old dog.
Valdy.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
Grimmer.
Here.
Casson.
Here.
Iker.
Here.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to number 4, special order of business. A presentation by Lake Country Fire and Rescue Chief Matt Fenig regarding an updated comprehensive emergency plan and planned emergency management training for city officials. Come on up.
Thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. So the document that you have before you is a very extensive, in-depth document that basically is our roadmap in the city of Delafield and for the 7 communities that we serve if there were to be some sort of natural or man-made disaster. Natural disasters such as a tornado, the flooding we had back in 2008, severe wind damage such as we had come through last week, or man-made disasters, a train incident from the train tracks, God forbid some sort of incident with the schools or anything like that. So this document is a kind of a blanket document that is really put forth by Waukesha County Emergency Management, who is who we report to as an agency when something like this happens, and then Waukesha EM reports to the state, who then reports to the feds. So this document is very similar in every community across Waukesha County.
Move the mic closer, please. Sorry, man.
Sorry about that, Tim. The document is basically boilerplate in every community in Waukesha County, including the city of Delafield. I know Chief Keith brought it forth, gosh, Tom, how long ago was that? A number of years ago.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been sitting there. So we had myself and Battalion Chief Herzberg, we updated the document to its state today with help of emergency management, so we won't have to be redoing this in a year or two to come before you. So has anyone had a chance to read all 200 and some pages? Any questions?
Well, we had 467 pages, I believe, in our package, so.
Hopefully I set a record. But again, I mean, the latest version that I could think where we would have referred to this is the flooding of 08 and 09. When we were sandbagging and all those operations that took place down by the dam there to really protect that dam and the lake and all the homes and the asset that is to the communities. We did not end up going back for funding or too much of it, I believe, but had there been a total catastrophic failure of that dam, the parts and pieces were in place to go back to the feds for funding for relief, federal emergency relief. So, like I said, the state emergency management works with FEMA on this type of thing, and that's the roadmap. But this document is our guiding light to that fund source.
Well, I'll just comment. I think you're selling yourself a little short saying that it's from Waukesha County. I know that you work closely with them, and that you did have to read and go through all these pages as a team. And I do remember the work that went into it to get this updated and actually be the document that it is to establish chain of command and all the different contingencies for the different disasters and that. So my basic question to you is what, and I did preview, you did reach out prior to this and I asked the same question, but so 2 things. One, what impact has the recent mergers had on this document for us and for the other communities? And aside from that, what other changes do you think needed to be made other than contact information and some updates on facilities? Really,
In terms of updating the document to serve the 4 new communities, we had to insert the verbiage for them to be in there. So they're all included inside the document. They will, each community will have its own separate declaration page that will look very similar, but instead of saying the city of Delafield, it will say the town of Delafield, Village of Wales, Village of Sheneko, and everything down the line. And that's really it. I think in terms of continuity, having one document that really covers 7 communities helps LCFR as an organization, because that's one source that my staff can go to when they are in this situation and they know how to handle it. So our command staff, if I'm not here, or Chief Hoppy or Chief Moon isn't here, they can go to this document and live it and breathe it, and so on and so forth. And also it helps you, for instance, the tornadoes that came through at the end of July. There was an EF0 in the Village of Summit. Had that hopped over, because it went from Sullivan to Summit, and had it hopped over into the city and then over down into the town and then maybe over into Wales, we're all working off the same sheet of music. So it really helps that continuity tremendously.
I agreed, and I'll just comment that when I first saw this, it seemed like it did fill a gap for where this didn't exist, you know, whatever, 8 years ago or when it came about, in that you could have disputes over who's doing what or who's supposed to be doing what, and you've got a common referenceable document with all the different entities that are going to be responding to disaster. So glad this is in place, and thanks for refreshing it. So that's the end of my comments.
Pleasure.
Were there any specific changes that you recall other than organizational that changed in this update that you would highlight?
It was all, to get into verbiage on NIMS, the National Incident Management System, there were some changes. As you can imagine, the feds do changes to that every 2 or 3 years. So we refreshed it with that. So as we go into training, which will be later in the year, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes, but there'll be training later in the year for all city staff, electeds and department heads, and that training is going to be also done at the same time for all of our 7 communities. So it'll be a great time to get us kind of all in the same room, and really emergency management is going to conduct the training. So it'll be a great refresher for everyone, and then also suggestions on maybe we should look at this class or that class for elected officials. There's some very simple online classes that you can take through FEMA right now to get you up to speed on when incidents like this happen, how we react, and what the process is moving forward. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so I guess there were no really
Okay.
specific changes other than,
Just updating it and getting it current.
yeah, thanks.
How did things go? Like, did you use this document with the wins and things like that when you were doing that? Are you already implementing it?
Yeah, actually, Tom and I had a meeting, kind of a pop-up meeting last week, Wednesday. So the storms came through on Tuesday. Didn't have a lot of effect on the city of Delafield other than some power outages and some trees down. I can't recall. It wasn't extraordinary by any nature of it. But further south in Wales, Wales took the brunt of that storm, and I think we had 22 incidents just in the Village of Wales alone. So they were predicting that those 2 storms went back to back. So Tuesday's storms were supposed to be carbon copied, if you recall watching the news on Tuesday and Wednesday last week, because they were predicting that same weather pattern to recur. So on Tuesday morning after the storms, I kind of talked to our command staff, and then we spun up a quick virtual EOC meeting on Tuesday afternoon with department heads from all 7 of our communities represented. I think there was 1 or 2 communities that weren't there. But if this were to happen again, what could we do differently, and kind of just some things in place. So we did spin up a mini version of it. A lot of what we've been doing through COVID and emergency funding and everything in regards to that, the weekly meetings that we were doing for about 6 months, it seemed like, every other week and then every 3 weeks. Those were all under this same framework, whether or not anyone knew it or not. It was all operating under that same thing. And the reason why you have to do it that way is if you were to go to the feds for funding, you have to follow their cookbook, if you will. And if you don't, and if you miss a step inside of there, you could be subject to not getting the funding you think you're going to get. So it's important that we follow that almost to the T.
Great. Any other questions on this topic? Okay, so we'll move on to 4B.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Matt, did you want to talk about the training at all, or?
Yes, I was actually going to find those exact dates. Do you have them off the top of your head? They're in November, right?
I don't.
Tom's going to be sending, or no, I'll send it, Tom, some dates that are going to be, we're going to try to do it on a Saturday morning, where we can get kind of everyone's going to need to be a big space so we can get from all 7 communities involved. And like I said, emergency management's going to come in and really conduct the training and get you up to speed on what to expect, how to expect it. The biggest thing that they're going to discuss is, okay, a tornado comes through tonight. We have to have an emergency meeting. I need to get a hold of the mayor, and we have to have that emergency meeting. And if you were around for 2008, we had that emergency meeting, and how we declare things. And now you can do some things virtually, and you can do some other things that I need to do as an emergency manager to really declare that, and then the board or the common council has to get together to affirm that. But really, once we declare that state of emergency, that's what opens up that funding to come in from the county, the state, and the federal government. So it's really important that those are the steps we follow. So Gail from Emergency Management, she's the new Waukesha County Emergency Manager. She will be helping with that presentation, and we'll really kind of go through it from A to Z. So it should be well, I don't necessarily know that I would declare it as a great time, but it'll be an educational experience.
Well, great. Don't go too far because you're coming back.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, we'll move on to 4B, discussion of possible action regarding adoption of the updated comprehensive emergency management plan by the city of Delafield.
I'll make a motion to adopt the CEMP.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to 5, approval of minutes of July 19, 2021 regular meeting.
Also move.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Tim,
I might have beat Jackie.
he was louder if he wasn't first. Okay, any citizens' comments? Mary? For those that can't see the chairs, Mary's our only person here today.
Good evening. My name is Mary Daniel. I live at 309 Wisconsin Avenue here in Delafield. As a citizen, I want to say thank you to all of our public employees, whether it be the DPW, the firemen, or the policemen, on the great job that they did in the storm. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that keep us safe. And if you see a DPW truck going down the road with a generator behind it, they're probably saving our sewers from backing up in our houses. So some of those things we just kind of forget. So if you see any of them, please reach out and say thank you. And you could buy donuts. But anyway, whatever. But they do an amazing job. And as I saw that DPW truck with a generator, I went, oh, I wonder where that saved us. So anyway, thank you to all of them.
Thank you very much for your comments. Well said. Right, seeing no other comments, citizens' comments are now closed. We'll go to number 7, the consent agenda. Don't have anything on there. So we'll move down to 8, board, committee, and commission reports. And we're going to jump to K1, which is Lake Country Fire and Rescue, report by Mr. Grimmer.
Thank you. We don't always get the chief here. We are discussing budget. We have a bigger group of municipalities. There are some specific issues that I wanted to kind of make sure the board was aware, because it will be a challenging budget year this year. So, and there's other things that I thought this would be a good opportunity to get the council's opinion on, kind of make sure that everyone has the right expectations for the budget, things of that nature. Lake Country Fire and Rescue is not immune to wage pressures and the difficulty in hiring that has been rampant across the state and the nation. And those wage pressures obviously put strains on the budget. The second thing is, second or third or fourth thing, is a discussion on CPI plus 2%, and whether that will be, well, whether we will take that budget to the maximum. CPI is obviously fairly elevated. Consumer Price Index is fairly elevated this year, which means there is an increased, you could call it an opportunity to take advantage of that, which helps our levy limit, helps increase the levy limit. And so there's consideration of that. With the increased, that CPI plus 2% is 5.1, 5.4?
5.14.
5.14. I was right on both.
That's just an estimate right now. We won't know that until the September CPI.
Okay. But is that a fairly accurate, rough?
I wouldn't expect it to change significantly unless inflation goes crazy all of a sudden.
Right. And so the preliminary budget as it exists now has that increase within it. A couple considerations on that increase are a few new hires, like I mentioned, the wage pressures, and one of the bigger changes that Matt can speak to as well are the revenue expectations. In the past, given the history of Lake Country Fire and Rescue and some challenges, how long have I been here? 7 years? 7 years ago, 8 years ago, with how we expect revenue to come in, and the budget expectations that we put through have been very conservative. And so historically, year after year after year, we traditionally, the municipal contributions are X, but we usually, as you've seen year after year after year, we get a check at the end of the year, because we have been very one of the reasons is we've been very conservative with those revenue projections. So those are the issues that are facing Lake Country Fire and Rescue. And like I said, I wanted to take this opportunity to have Matt expand on any of those, and you can start wherever you want. Hiring, wage issues.
I thought I would just kind of go down the memo.
Go ahead.
There, so
Yep.
everyone kind of is on that same.
Just make sure you're talking into the mic.
Sure. Sorry, I'll bring it closer. So the memo that was presented to the board on August 5th of 2021, basically, taking a cost of living increase for our employees. And as Matt said, we are seeing tremendous wage pressure across full-time, part-time, paid-on-call staff. People are fighting for people right now, to the point where other municipalities are offering lateral transfers to come in an officer-type position. I've never seen that before. Traditionally, when you were promoted to an officer, whether it be lieutenant, a captain, a battalion chief, deputy chief, you were there to stay, because you weren't going to go and start over in a career at another fire department. That is over. They're lateral transfers. You're carrying your vacation time over. You're carrying your sick time over. And I could go from, not me personally, but an employee could go from Lake Country Fire Rescue and go to a bigger municipality somewhere in Milwaukee County and just laterally transfer over, and those are starting to be offered. So that's tremendous pressure. And our most important asset is our employees, 100%. We invest in our employees starting in high school. We're investing to teach them in high school, and I am probably, and Captain Marty Morris and Battalion Chief Heltemus are the three living, breathing people as a product of success in that, is that we have invested in our employees through and through and through to make them the best employees for these communities. And these are great communities to work in. But I'd hate to see us lose out on our investment. And some of us, that investment is six-figure, 100%. By the time you take wages that everyone's been paid, their schooling that they have gone to, their life experience that they have in working in these communities, and the fact that they know these communities, now 7 of them, inside and out. They know every community, address, grid structure, how to get to places, where we're at frequently, the ins and outs of buildings such as the Neshota House Complex, St. John's Military Academy. They know these buildings inside and out. So it's hard to quantify what that investment is worth, but I can assure you that it's in the six figures. So as Matt was saying, we're seeing tremendous wage pressure with that competition across the board. And I feel in what I've presented to the board is that we give our employees a 3% cost of living increase. That was kind of one of the founding things of the budget. After that 3% increase to our employees, our salary and benefits line is the biggest line in our budget, hands down. I mean, we don't buy product to sell products or make widgets and things like that, so we don't have those type of line items in our budget, but salary and benefits is the biggest. After that, we needed to add 4,000 to our computer accounts for IT hardware to basically beef our IT hardware up so we're not subject to these cyber attacks that are going on across the world right now. So we need some hardware and firewall things of that nature. And on top of that, I had to increase our fuel expenses by 24%. And that's not just like Country Fire Rescue. I think every time we go to the pump, we're all paying that. I think commodity prices have increased 27% since the creation of our budget in March of 2020. And fuel, I'll tell you, fuel expenses and insurance were probably two biggest unknowns for me as I created a new budget for 7 communities. Insurance has kind of come right in line to our expectations. Fuel costs is right in line to where it was supposed to be, gallon for gallon. However, with the 27% increase that we're seeing in the commodities index, it's really kind of chewing away and eroding away at that. So I felt it prudent to put that increase in there. We need to increase the operations account by 3% just to cover some dive equipment maintenance that needs to happen. That's annual preventative maintenance. And then I had to increase the maintenance account to cover the ladder truck. The ladder truck is Tom's most favorite prized possession. And that truck is 20 years old as of next year. That truck, I'm sorry, it'll be 19 years old. We have just received word, it went through its annual testing this year, and the amount of corrosion that exists between the frame of the vehicle and what is known as the torque box. And if you want to think of the frame would be the length of this room, and the torque box is this table. And the torque box is what takes all of the weight and the load from the ladder as it's picked up and it's moved, 70 degrees one way, 90 degrees off the side and down, and things like that. There is a significant amount of corrosion that's occurring in between there. There's really no way to combat those. Those are two things that are, for lack of a better term, married at the factory when it comes down the line. And the only way to get in there and do anything about it is to split the two of them, which means taking the whole entire truck apart, taking the ladder off, and that's simply cost prohibitive. We're doing the best we can. We're using a product called Carwell to treat that area and really move it forward, or try to get as much life out of it as we can. However, we're just staring down the inevitable. So I felt that we needed to cover some increased costs with that next year. It went in and it had $7,000 of work done in it just last month alone to make sure that the outriggers are coming in and out, so it's safe to use. So, but we do know about it. It was something that has gotten, I will say, 150 times worse than this time last year, and there's honestly, there isn't much we can do about it. It's the product that we put down on the streets from November. When did they start pre-treating? November 15th?
Are you blaming Tom?
No.
Whenever it starts getting icy.
It's
Some
that
years not till
product.
January.
Yeah. It's the product that they put down on the streets. Waukesha County goes out and does a great job of making sure that all of the highways and byways are pre-treated and every overpass is pre-treated. However, it erodes the trucks from the bottom out. So that's just kind of where we're at with them. Excuse me.
Matt, when's the truck scheduled for replacement now?
We moved it up to 2024. It was a 2025 or 6. So
It was originally at 2023.
2023, correct.
And you moved it out, and then you moved it back in?
I take that back down. We moved it back to 2023, not 2024. So current trucks right now, with our current vendor, and we will obviously competitively price this out with everyone, are 13 to 16 months out, just with the way that steel is. I mean, if anyone's gone to the local dealership and tried to buy a vehicle lately, you understand everything that's going on. So a truck of this magnitude is 13 to 16 months out. We would be looking at purchasing it somewhere in the neighborhood of February, March of 2022 for a delivery in 2023. So that's kind of the tentative plan, of course, subject to board approval. But that's where things are at with that.
You pay on delivery?
What's that?
You pay on delivery?
You can
Probably
pre-
not.
you can prepay, you get a discount if you prepay. So what we're going to propose to the board, or what I have proposed to the board, is paying $500,000 towards it next year, which saves you 4%. So you get to save. They give you a 4% interest savings on it. So that still covers us. It doesn't totally deplete our capital reserve fund, and then allows us to do it the next year.
Is the truck going to have resale value?
I'm not even going to put numbers.
Whose truck is that? Is that the city's
Yours,
truck? Oh, okay.
It will have a resale value.
Put it down as a dollar.
Will somebody use that truck?
Will somebody? Sure.
Yeah,
It'll
we
be,
sold the engine, or to Haiti, right?
Yeah, the engine, no, it went to Guatemala.
Guatemala, sorry.
So the engine that was owned by Neshota in this village of Shaniqua went to Guatemala. They loaded it on a flatbed and it went down to the port of Miami or Fort Lauderdale and got on a ship and is down there.
Wow.
So to answer your question, will the truck get used? Yes. Where I see it being used is by some sort of tree service or something along those lines. That's typically where they go, where they're not having to put a seal of approval of safety on it and things like that.
It's a huge truck for a tree guy to drive around in.
Yeah, it's so that's where a lot of the water tenders go and things like that. You know, I can just say that we're facing, you know, exponential maintenance fees in it later in life.
Makes sense.
We kind of got sidetracked in the latter stuff, but the remainder of the increase up to the 5.14% is really to invest again in staffing. We need to continue to invest in increasing our full-time staff. We kind of went into the merger knowing that. And it's next year what we're proposing to the board is that we increase that staff in the month of July. And what we'd be doing is adding a person per shift. We have 3 shifts in July, and then not backfilling when a person is out sick, on vacation, or on personal or holiday time. So it would really be increasing strength by 1 and not increasing minimum staffing at all. And that will pay dividends for us. This is the first year really that we've seen people out on extended injuries. I currently have 2 employees out on injuries, one with a knee injury. He had surgery last week, Thursday, and will be out through probably February at the earliest. The doctors do not let people come back to full-on firefighting until they are 100%. They have to be able to fit that fitness test, and that's a liability to the agency, quite frankly, if they come back earlier. Thankfully, knock on wood, neither one of these injuries are work-related, so we won't be seeing that hit. And it's just, as we had a young staff about 10 years ago, and that staff is starting to get older, myself included. So, and that's really where the balance of the increase is we continue to invest in that, and that's vitally, vitally important. Right now, we're running really 3 people down, which has an effect on staff, mandating in to cover overtime, has an effect on the budget because we're paying overtime to mandate these people in. I have an obligation to the 7 communities to provide a minimum number of people to those communities to be able to respond at a moment's notice, and right now that number is 11. And we've dipped below that on a couple of occasions, all too frequently, quite frankly, and we need to make sure that we're not doing that.
Station 31. Station.
Sorry. But all good. So, anyway, sorry, we've dipped below that on far too many occasions, and we can't do that.
So when you say 11, is that per shift or is that your full-time?
No, 11 people per shift, 24/7, 365.
And when you have a sick call, and how does that affect? I know the answer, but
Yeah, when somebody calls in sick, the person that is coming off of shift is mandated to stay. So they have to, you know, it's a tough phone call to make, but sorry, Sam, you got to stay today, and that happens all too frequently. And when that happens, you can imagine what that does to morale of the agency. And then when you start to get in the competitive market, like I was talking about before with wage pressure, it really adds to that.
But really, the consolidation was good for everyone in the sense that you do have this manpower available if you have a
100%.
problem,
Yes.
a big accident.
Oh, mate. Mr. Barron, the consolidation has done exponential, awesome things for all 7 communities.
Yeah.
And we don't come to this body enough to really talk about it. I was running the numbers just before I came here. The city of Delafield alone has seen it's a 28% decrease in response times to the community alone. That's minutes. We've cut minutes off of response time. The only way we were able to do that is we took geography out of the question. And we're doing that by responding out of the station in the town of Delafield right now. So that page that just went out was a response from the town of Delafield station, the city of Delafield station, to respond to a call on Journeys Drive. And the town of Delafield is the closer station to that, but they're out on a call right now. So everyone's kind of working together in that system, and it's done amazing things for these communities. Quite frankly, if you were to look at adding a station onto that side of the lake, which is the only way that you could have decreased response times, you're into that for $6 or $7 million for the building alone.
Yeah, the consolidation has really benefited the city, just with the addition of the town, the town station. Helps out you guys.
Since people are listening, I want
Yes,
to make that
no, that's a great
because
point. Yep.
We're stepping into this new thing that we know we like, but the citizens should know it does impact them.
It's huge.
And that's why, and there are, yes, you had mutual aid, but that was more complicated. Where you have unity of command now.
The best way I can put it, and the best way to describe it to somebody is that think of a structure fire, which is our bread and butter operations, right? We would show up to structure fires with automatic mutual aid all the time. It would happen twice a month. We'd be going somewhere, they'd be coming here. And you'd get there and you would work together and it would work. But now that you're working from the same sheet of music and the same playbook, the same offensive playbook, it's amazing. Everyone's clicking and just working together, and it's really been great to be part of. Am I going to sit there and tell you that we haven't had some bumps in the road? No, we certainly have. We're a growing agency with melding 3 families, but the unity of those type of incidents where everyone's working together has been amazing.
So then I have the other question, news to me, I guess. I've been telling people that our budget limit is new growth. Is there something new that?
Our budget limit is what?
New growth in the community?
So
New construction?
Yeah, there's a number of other adjustments to it, and one of them that the city's always taken advantage of is there's a joint fire adjustment, and you can take that adjustment as long as the total budget for Lake Country Fire and Rescue goes up by less than CPI plus 2%. And it's really imperative that we don't exceed that by even a penny. I mean, we got to make sure there's no rounding errors. We got to make sure we're using the exact CPI and not an estimated one. Because as an example, CPI plus 2% for the city, that's going to be about a $50,000 increase in our contribution to LCFR. And with the joint fire adjustment, we can increase our levy limit by that $50,000. But if we exceed CPI plus 2% by even a penny or a dollar, our costs still go up $50,000, but we get no adjustment to our levy limit.
So one of the things that I've been concerned about, and one of the things that I'm glad that the chief showed up tonight, is since CPI is so significant this year. Normally, I don't want to say it's always a no-brainer to take CPI plus 2% for the reasons that Tom mentioned, but CPI is significant this year. 5.1441 is a significant increase, and you're locked into that spending, and that's no small amount. That's no small amount of spending. But as you heard from the chief, there are significant wage pressures and issues with running a fire department. But I just want to make everyone aware that those are some of my concerns. According to the Federal Reserve and Chairman Powell, inflation should be temporary. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But we could fall back into a 2%, CPI year over year in 2022, 2023. And we are locking ourselves into a 5+% increase. But you've heard the reasons why the chief feels and many feel on Lake Country Fire and Rescue Board that increase is warranted. Okay. The last thing I just want to bring up is the revenue expectations. Like I said, in the past, we had been very conservative in revenue expectations. We will, with this budget as it is proposed, we will not be. We will meet what we're doing this year plus, no, we're just doing what we're meeting this year, what our revenue is, and then
What we're targeting for this year.
exactly. Where in the past we were very conservative. We would budget probably, 5%, 10% less? Yeah. So the checks for $67,000 that come at the end of 2020 would no longer be there.
Potentially.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, it kind of, as I stated before, that I think two areas on the operations side that were very good calculated estimates were insurance, because we all know how insurance works sometimes, and fuel. And it was hard to quantify the fuel. We receive all of our, at the time last year, we got all of our fuel from the pumps at the DPW building. The two other agencies were using Quick Trip to purchase their fuel. So we had to really dive into some numbers with the stuff that they were doing from Quick Trip to kind of get us to an approximate gallonage of how many gallons of fuel we would use every year. And I used that, figured that fuel would go up anywhere from 5 to 10%, and it's gone up 27%. So, I mean, that's kind of just the commodities index just in and of itself. So, on the revenue side, it was very difficult to anticipate ambulance revenues. There was two different firms that really did the ambulance billing for the three agencies. City of or Lake Country rather, and the town of Delafield use a service called Ambulance, or AMB, Andre's Medical Billing. And Wales Genesee used a different firm called LifeQuest. LifeQuest does their math a little bit different than Andres did, so it was really hard to get a firm, accurate number in that. We were safe with it, I'll tell you that, but it's this year, what I put in the budget for 2022 is below where we're tracking for this year, but by 3% or so. And that's the hardest one. That's the one that honestly came back to hurt Lake Country Fire Rescue in 2013 and 2014, and I'm very cautious of that.
So two quick questions, maybe not quick, but one, I know that coming out of the gate, when we did the consolidation just between Neshota, Shaniqua, and City of Delafield back several years ago, we started with no reserve, I believe. And I know that budget line items have been added to build that up, and you referenced it in the purchase of the new engine, of the new ladder truck.
Correct.
So does the budget moving forward still include keeping that reserve funded? And
currently, as it
moving
sits
forward?
right now, the board has a budget or a reserve account of $250,000 that is fully funded.
Okay.
That is owned by Shaniqua, Neshota, Delafield, and you'd have to go back to the percentages to find out what that's owned at. We can anticipate if there's reserve or excess from this year, we'll be adding to it from the 4 new communities as
Okay,
well.
that was going to be my question. So that they're going to be contributing. They're expecting to be weaned into that.
I think that's our expectation, that's my expectation, that there will be equality among all 7 municipalities.
Correct.
With that. It's on the next agenda or a future agenda where we're going to be talking about what to do with that $250K. There are
Right.
liabilities that may need to be covered, that may necessitate that stay where it is, but obviously it's the original 3 communities' money. And either the additional communities pony up to an equivalent amount and we all move forward together, or the money is distributed back to the original 3 or somewhere in between.
Okay, and excuse me if this was covered and I missed it when we did the consolidation with the additional communities over the last couple of years, but it's my understanding that regardless of what your contribution is, still any one of this, it used to be one of the communities could step on the budget and say, no, we're just not buying into this. Are we still in the same boat with
Yes.
7 communities?
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, this is something that everyone's got to be happy with moving
Yes.
forward, and so we've got 7 votes here, and we're one of 7 votes for the entire thing. So
Yep.
So you guys have your work cut out for you, and so if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. I mean, right? I mean, this is something that it's a marriage among 7
It is, and that's
communities.
part of the reason that I asked Matt to stay tonight, is there are some communities who might want to take CPI plus 2%, which is the 5.41 in an increase, and they're fine with that. And there are some communities that might not. For me, going back to my constituents, and maybe you going back to yours, and the town, and you might be in the same boat, the town of Delafield, to come back and say, hey, we've got a 5.4% increase, that's a tough pill to swallow. Having said that, you've heard the wage pressures, you've heard the challenges that Lake Country Fire and Rescue faces. There is no better service out there. The emergency medical services that they provide are top-notch, and I know personally from that, that they do an absolutely fabulous job, so you're getting your money's worth. But it's a significant increase, and everybody has to agree, and it's no small
No, it's good.
potatoes.
It's more involved spreadsheet, right? I mean, everyone needs to
Yes.
see the same
Yeah.
value, and it's
Right.
a value that you don't want to have to experience personally, because I don't want to see the fire truck in my driveway ever, you know, unless you're dropping off cookies or something. But so just from personal experience, I had a loved one that dealt with 1 or 2 emergency calls and about 6 or 7 transports over the last 2 years. Almost never the same people. You just drop anybody from Lake Country Fire and Rescue in to deal with someone, and they're just wonderful. It was great experience, very loving, very professional, and I've talked with different people from different communities, and they don't have that same experience. So that's the end of my testimony. But if you need one to go to these other communities, I'll come talk. So.
Yeah, and I think kind of some of the things that we touched on really early out of the gate. The decrease in response time to this community is worth, well, I mean, $7 million for a station and at least $1 million in staffing to put in that building. That's hard to quantify in a budget that we're coming into in the second year. The town of Delafield has seen virtually the same level of service increase. They have a decrease in response time to anyone over here, anyone off of Government Hill Road that's responded to from the public safety building. The first, I think, 2 weeks out of the gate of the new agency and all the new response plans that were going on, there were 2 residents that suffered severe heart attacks. And we were to those residents, and they were transported. So we were on scene. They were in the ambulance and on the way to the hospital within 12 minutes of the 911 call being placed. On the cardiac catheterization table, 28 minutes after the 911 call being placed. That is, you can't get any better than that. So everyone has seen the benefit, and quite frankly, those cases are tremendous success cases, and that those people could have been on the other end of that statistic if it would have taken 5-7 minutes longer to get there. So, it's just a testimonial to one of this body for investing and believing in what's going on here. 12 years ago, this wouldn't be possible. So we're just
Agreed, and I'll just follow up saying that the people I dealt with several times didn't look like they were in it for the money. I know they like to get paid, but it's a culture, and so if we're not losing them because of 22 cents an hour, so the extra 80 cents on the CPI or whatever isn't going to be what the issue is. Just keep the culture going, you know, and you know, appeal for support and whatever.
It was, I was telling Matt earlier, we did the calculation based on the amount of residents. There's 28,000 residents roughly in the communities, and I think the cost of living increase we're talking about is 43 cents per resident.
Right.
So.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it.
Yep, thank you
Mr.
very
Mayor.
much. Thanks for both times.
Yeah.
Thank you
For your time.
Thanks, Matt.
And thanks to the council for staying after. Extra.
Okay, we'll get back to the agenda. We'll go on to 8A licenses. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of the 2021-2022 alcohol beverage retail license to be issued to Olive Garden LLC upon receipt of the occupancy permit from the city of Delafield. Who's got
Also
that one?
move.
I'll second.
Right?
I have a question on that. Is that one of the licenses we already had, or is this a license we had to purchase from another municipality?
One that we had.
Is one of our reserves, correct?
Yes, this is the final reserve. It's been purchased. I had some emails out to the Department of Revenue to find out when we could actually approve and issue this, because they've been kind of in the process and had it pending, and the Department of Revenue okayed us doing this now before the occupancy permit is official, as long as we don't physically issue it to them at that point, or as long as we, until that point, and I apologize. So we're good
With
to go.
the preliminary census numbers, are we getting another, did we meet the threshold to get another liquor license?
I haven't seen the preliminary census numbers yet.
It went up by 98. Read it in the Freeman.
98 people?
I don't think so.
98
That's
people.
not going to do it.
No.
I think it was like 130 or 140 we
Oh,
needed.
no, it wasn't that. Didn't make it. Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes. Okay, we'll move on to B, Planning Commission. Mr. Iker.
Okay, just quick couple of items. One, we've had some signage requests, nothing radical, just some updates to signage around the city. And one of them involves new tenant down near where Famous Footwear, I believe, was. There's a Sherwin-Williams moving in there, so I'm excited, actually. They're a nice store. But so that was approved, as well as we've got 4 action items. Oh, another item worth noting, and everyone got notes on this. It went out to anyone signed up for our online messaging on the website. But discussion about possible transfer of ownership of the gun club. The applicant has put off their presentation or application from August to potentially a future date. So just stay tuned into the city and look for information on that coming up, probably very likely in September, but we'll see. And the action items we have here are all 4 related to the same development, which is housing development on Neshota Road and Mission Road, roughly just north of St. Joan of Arc Church in the northwest quadrant in District 7. And I don't believe there's a huge disparity amongst what the different items are that we're discussing here. It's all related to the same development. I mean, there's not, if you've got a question on one, you've got a question on all of them. So I think it'd be worth just hearing what this is all about. It's a development that's been it was approved about 8 years ago, and it's changed, I think, for the better. And I guess I'll reserve comments until we go forward from that, and maybe have the applicant come up and just give a quick overview of what's going on. Does that make sense?
You want to come up?
Because I'm assuming there might be questions, but I guess as he's walking up, I'll just say that it'd be great if everybody who had a subdivision or a development plan reached out to everybody the way Mr. Seatman has, including St. Joan of Arc Church. He met with people there and moved driveways around, asked about the design of the barn. There's certain things and hurdles and possible conflicts that have been resolved before we even heard about it in the Plan Commission. And this seems very much embraced by the neighbors as far as the the aesthetics of it, the conservation of the land and trees, dealing with the neighbors and pass-through for potential future development to the northwest of it, as well as how it fits into our trail plan. So hopefully that's a good introduction.
Hard to add any more. This has been before you with
Wait,
the PUD agreement.
name?
Sorry, Jim Seatman, Seatman Realty. This was before you for the PUD agreement some months back. We've moved forward and we have all the engineering and stormwater done and we're ready to start construction. We're hoping to start around September 1st. We have our pre-construction meeting this week on Wednesday. We've had a rather large amount of people interested in wanting to relocate into the city of Delafield, which is fun. And it's been really well received in the marketplace. It's still 22 lots in the first phase. There's potentially 3 phases to this development, and this will be the first one that's immediately north of the church. And it's just got some exciting things to it with the barn. People like the idea of having that feel of the open space and the rural character that we're keeping in the fencing, and keeping the lots back off of the street is showing a lot of interest. We have about a mile of paved trails, 8-foot wide paved trails, and when we went through COVID in the last year, what we found is one of the top amenities for developments right now is walking and just being outside, and so that is our #1 amenity to this. So we're anxious to take it forward, and if you have any questions of me.
I love this development. I loved the plan several years ago when it first appeared, and I'm very excited to see it up and potentially going forward.
Thank you.
So there are 4 different items on the agenda for approval related to this development. The first one would be the preliminary plat. The second one would be the specific implementation plan, which is all the engineering and whatnot. The third one is the stormwater maintenance agreement, and the fourth one is the developer's agreement.
And I'll just comment, the first 2 items were the ones that the Plan Commission acted on and voted unanimously in favor of. So if there's questions, have them now. I'll make the motion for the first one, and why don't we just leave it open for questions after that, and then we can motor through them. But I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat agreement as referred by the Plan Commission on July 28th.
I'll
2A?
second it.
2A.
2A, correct.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
I'll make a motion for item 2B for the specific implementation plan as recommended by the Plan Commission.
So moved.
I'll second, or
Or
Matt,
second,
you
second.
I couldn't hear, sorry.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
All right, I'll make a motion for the approval of item 2C, the stormwater maintenance agreement.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm
Hearing-
confused, Tim. Did you say that the Plan Commission addressed the first 2, but not the second 2?
It's all contingent upon the stormwater maintenance agreement. So this is all the stuff that city staff and the stormwater maintenance agreement and the developer's agreement are what the staff and the lawyer gets to work out with the
Okay, thank
the
you.
developer. So we were assuming no issues, and it doesn't sound like there was any.
There was plenty of issues. It took
Yeah.
us a,
Yeah,
took us
these guys they rewrote the whole thing.
Well, okay, so
Actually, the next one, they
through
rewrote
and,
the whole next one.
and we're at a point now where everybody's happy with it.
okay, so one issue I was aware of just going into this, and I'm assuming this maybe this was one of them, was the plat on the northwest corner of phase 2 is the dedication for the 4-acre dedication for the park, where the city agreed. I mean, conceptually, we agreed in the Plan Commission phase to say that's where stormwater runoff can go, and that they reserve a certain section of that to have a pond and that for
Aesthetic.
aesthetic appearing pond, yeah, for as a part of that park dedication to the city, and that's one issue I was aware of that was a loose end that made, I'm sure, Mr. Seatman losing a couple nights' sleep until this was all resolved, but assuming it will be tonight. But this was eyes wide open going into that. But anyway, so that's one thing that I know that was out there. And I don't know what else there was, but assuming it was all handled, I'm good with it.
Yep. So we're on 3, right? And
We're
we're in
still on
discussion?
item 2C.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, C.
But good question, Wayne. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes.
And I'll make a recommendation to approve the item 2D, the Hawthorne Farm Developers Agreement.
Second?
Right, any discussion? I'll just say this is the one they completely rewrote, which all worked out, but. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention passes. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're
Good
on
luck.
to start
Thank you.
construction in September.
Start digging.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for working with us so well.
Well, that goes both ways. The city staff, council, planning commission have been awesome through this whole project.
Yay.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
You have no option to say anything but that.
If he won't, his brother will.
Like I said, that there continues to be some nice activity as far as businesses and that goes, and that moving into the city. So just keep your eyes peeled. And the gun club thing, like I said, is like a hot topic that seems to be getting the appropriate amount of attention. So look out for that. And that's it for Plan Commission.
Great, thank you much. All right, we will move on to C, Lake Welfare Committee.
Thank you very much. First thing to note, the minutes that are noted in here are from the July 22 meeting. And we had a meeting just last week. 2 things worth noting. The first one was we're reviewing the boathouse checklist if somebody wants to build a boathouse. Things that we can just provide. It's a list we can just provide to any city resident that wants to build a boathouse, and they can check the things off, and they can clearly see up front. So we're in the current process of trying to make sure that list is accurate and as easy as possible, but complete. The second thing worth noting is when a boathouse is built, because of the runoff, a rain garden is required. The concern came up whether the rain garden stays there in perpetuity, which is what it's supposed to. So there's a discussion that's been brought forward on asking residents to, it's just a discussion at this point, but asking residents to just verify that they still have this rain garden every 2 years, biannually. It said biannually in the Lake Welfare agenda. So every 2 years they would have to send in a picture, as opposed to maybe doing it with something through the county, which would be much more costly and possibly more easily missed by later buyers. So just to make sure that the lake is protected as it should be.
Make a comment about that, just as a matter of something I don't believe that we've ran into before in the Plan Commission is that we had, because typically boathouses come to us as a referral from Lake Welfare, and so we aren't usually looking at a lot of things like that, but just compliance with your approval and some other things the building inspector might weigh in on. But we had a recent occurrence where they weren't in compliance with their own subdivision covenants. So I don't know if you've got a checklist, but that would be worthwhile to put on there, because some people have, as a function of their plan development or what their standards are for their community or what they've agreed to with handshakes when they've built it for neighbors and that, they arrived at certain standards that might be more stringent than what the city imposes on them. And we don't have a ton of teeth to put into that, but their neighbors may, and it's easier for them to get that resolved when they're going through the the public approval process than a civil litigation later if somebody's like
Sure.
stepping on toes, so.
And thank you for bringing that up. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we are trying to do with the
So-
checklist.
But
is
so, yeah, just,
get it up front.
yeah,
Thanks.
have them check with, kind of deed restrictions and subdivision covenants, because sometimes those are pretty nasty. And it's better to,
Restrict.
more, well, more well-intended. But it's better to deal with those when you're building it than in court.
Certainly.
Bill, is there discussion about who would manage that process?
The pictures?
No, yeah, as far as making sure, year one, if 20% of the people submit pictures, and what's the next step? And
Like I said, it's in the discussion process. Amy Barrows had actually suggested that we have the residents, particularly the last 25, since we've been requiring rain gardens as a condition of building the boathouse. Amy Barrows had suggested that they register it with the county. And as I've said, there's a cost to that. And so the suggestion came up to do it within the city. Specific persons in the city or positions in the city to take care of that has not been discussed. But the idea was, Scott seems to be in favor of that as just everybody's got to send it in 2 years, and if somebody doesn't comply, then he can follow up that way. But it's just, apparently Scott was brought into the discussion previously, and I can verify that, but that was my understanding.
The discussion was really clear that it was not going to put any additional burden on the city staff. That was mentioned a couple
keep
of
it as
times. That
For residents and city, keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, it was. They were really that we weren't going to put that they didn't want to put any more.
We didn't want to start going out
Yeah.
and checking that. We just wanted,
it can be quite a challenge to run everybody down and get them willing to comply.
yeah, I'm sure. So there's 20, I think it was 25, 23 technically, I guess, that would be on that list, since that's how long we've been requiring it. So I'll verify that with Scott, and they definitely don't want to create more of a burden for anybody.
All right, anything else? Anything else, Phil, on that?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to D, Park and Recreation Commission and Tree Board. Mr. Grimmer.
We had a late July meeting. Two issues, I guess, two things I'll bring up. One, in our capital budget discussions, Park and Rec Commission decided to prioritize building in their capital request to the council, prioritize the building of the stage at Liberty Park, the band shell, and make that a priority. There was a group that had sought to privately fund that venture, and they may have had the capacity to build a smaller, less expensive stage, much like you would see at the summer stage at Lapham Peak. But it was decided that the commission decided that they'd like to pursue a more grand vision for the city. Much that I'm sure all of you have seen some of the drawings done by MSI, and include that as their priority for 2022. That doesn't prohibit private funding, doesn't not prohibit pursuing grants, which I'm sure if approved we would pursue. The thought on the commission is that this would be a much needed city center that could bring people in for festivals and events and cultural performances, ballet, theater, jazz in the park once a month, promotion and tourism obviously can get involved, chamber, lots of events that could take place at this and be a really a city center. So that's the one thing. The second thing is I would encourage everyone to go take a look at the Bark River and all those plantings. They're just, what is it, leaping? creeping. No, they're not creeping. Sleep, leap, creep. Sleep, creep,
Leap.
leap.
First year
Yes.
they sleep, second year they creep, third year they leap.
Yes, they're leaping, right?
Love it.
They are. They're leaping this year. Just beautiful. They really are. And on our agenda for next meeting, we'll have a discussion on how to continue potentially with volunteers the maintenance of that riverbank.
Awesome.
And that's all I have.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to E, Public Works. Mr. Barron.
So we had a meeting and continued to work on the path plan. And if you look at those agenda items, you'll see the drafts, and every month we're updating them. At some point, we're going to publish that and say, here's our path plan, and hold some kind of meeting for public comment. The other thing is that we are proposing 2 paths, and it's later in the agenda, but we know of 2 that are clearly on the plan, no matter what kind of plan we draw. So one is going up Nagawicka Road a little bit further, and the other one is going from basically Lutheran Church up to Carriage Hills. So we want to get going on some of that stuff. The one thing we have done since it was Park and Plan started out with the plan is we adopted everything that was recommended there, but you'll see some notations because a lot of their recommendations are paths that are through potential developments, which we don't know exactly where those are going to go, but we're leaving them all on the map. So there's a few locations where it looks like there's more than one, but the intent is to have some of the stuff, like Seatman just said, he's got a mile of paths in that subdivision. Some of it's public, some of it's private. But so we don't have any conflicts with the work that's been done prior. DPW is primarily interested in the stuff that's in the public right-of-way on the thoroughfares. That seems to generate a lot of discussion. But you're going to see a path. We'd like to push on Neshota and have something go all the way around the lake at some point. So that was that meeting.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, Police Commission. Still no meeting?
No meeting.
Did I? Oh, boy. All right, Delahart. Riker.
No meeting, no report.
There we
If
go.
there was a meeting, it was great, and everything's going super awesome at Delhart.
We hope so. It's a disaster if it's not, right?
No, well, just briefly, I think we did have, I think we had a meeting immediately following our council meeting here, and it did go well. Our project for the upgrade with the UV lighting and all that stuff is going very, very well. And so the upgrade's in place, and we've got a partner with an energy conservation plan to help fine tune when we do certain tasks that save on our energy bill, and encourage you to look into doing the same for your own house because it's a big savings. And anyways, no, things are going well.
Great. Library Board.
Library
Melanie.
Board met last Tuesday during the storm. And there are just a couple things that I wanted to touch on. There are now 6 internet computers available for patron use, so that has gone up. Reminder that patrons have a 2-hour limit, and they need a library card. The library also has gone back to extended evening hours, so Monday through Thursday they're open till 8 p.m., which is wonderful. We also have, I think, one of the few libraries that are open on Sunday, 1 to 4. So you can check the library website for all the specifics.
Jackie, is that already started or coming up?
That, I believe, is coming up.
Yeah. It looked like they were closed before the meeting here.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe I misread it, but I thought it said September 1st.
Yeah, I think it's September 1.
So for school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Very observant. One other fun thing for folks is visit Culver's in Wales. I'm coming up on Tuesday, August 31st, so just before a lot of kids go back to school on the 1st. From between 5 and 8 p.m., a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the Friends of the Library, all of which goes directly back to the library. So yeah, eat some whatever custard and butter burger, right? And you'll help the library, which is kind of nice. That's it. Our next meeting is September 14th. Right
Sounds
here.
good. I assume no zoning board of appeals meeting. Promotion and tourism, Mr. Barron.
Well, we had a meeting and looked at the preliminary budget for next year, and we basically started with a budget that's similar to this year, which assumes the lower revenues that were the result of COVID. Well, with that said, we have had a pickup in the library, or rather the hotel tax revenues in the first quarter and or the second quarter, and so I think we adjusted the budget up a bit because we think we can fund it.
Yeah, second quarter was higher than any second quarter we've ever had.
Yeah, so it's one of these knock-on wood
Ever
things.
had?
Ever.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's one of these
They raise
knock-on wood
rates?
things. We may be out of the
Probably.
But with that said, we have refined how we spend our money, and we've got some members who have really made sure that we're getting a bang for the buck. So the budget is much smaller than it used to be. So, but we have a deficit we
Yeah.
want to make up.
Had to do what you had to do.
Yeah. But it was kind of nice to say, well, there's a couple of extra things we can do next year, and we just said, you know what, we can add that to the budget. So.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to 9, unfinished business. A, continuation of providing virtual access to the Common Council and Planning Commission meetings through Zoom. Tom, is that yours?
Yeah, this comes back from last meeting. If you recall, we discussed stopping the Zoom meetings. And with doing so, the council wanted to preserve the ability to bring back Zoom meetings on occasion. And specifically, the council had mentioned, based on the administrator's discretion, Alderman Dean expressed concern about Robert's Rules of Orders with doing so. And his concerns were legitimate, that if we do want to get into identifying rules for virtual meetings, that we really should codify that and pass an ordinance that identifies when we're going to have those meetings, who can call them, how many people can participate virtually, things like that. There are some municipalities that say, one person from the committee can participate virtually. Others say, in cases of emergency or pandemic, that the whole council could participate virtually, things like that. So with that being said, the city can stop having Zoom meetings if you choose to. We identified the reasons why you may want to consider last time with regards to it being difficult on staff to run the Zoom meeting at the same time as participating in the meetings. There was a slight cost, which is largely nominal. But at the same time, there was some updated guidance from the Department of Justice that I included in the packet, and that their recommendation is that the city continue to provide virtual access until the pandemic is done. So looking for direction from the council on whether you want to continue having virtual meetings. The Robert's Rules of Orders that we need to establish really don't pertain to having a virtual meeting, but it pertains to how the council or the plan commission participates in virtual meetings. So we can have the meetings or not have the meetings, but in order for council members to participate virtually, we really should establish that in an ordinance. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on continuing Zoom meeting or stopping them, and then also thoughts that staff can use to go to the drawing board and start to write up an ordinance on what we'd like to see with regards to virtual participation.
So one question I had is, we've had some committee meetings where somebody participates by telephone.
We have, and when you talk to Attorney Hammes, he says that the city does not need to follow Robert's Rules of Orders directly, that we can follow them loosely. He's not concerned about some of those things, but he said it would be better to establish it by ordinance as far as making it clear as to how we can do virtual meetings in the future.
I
Does that
guess
include telephone, like phone call, like Jim's talking, like
It
on a
does.
speakerphone?
It does,
Okay.
yes.
my concern is that there are rare occasions where you have a split opinion on the council, and attendance might dictate how those votes go if you're missing one or two people. And so I think we have to have some kind of objective standard. Either we're all able to be here, either physically and or by some communication. And my thought is that you can't play games with it, that, okay, this one will allow everyone here and this one we won't. I think it needs to be the same.
Right.
Whatever we do. I mean, the same was before the electronic world. It's whoever showed up here, as long as there was a quorum, we had a meeting.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the Town of Brookfield ordinance that Attorney Hammes provided. But every community is a little bit different. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I thought it was real interesting that they say in theirs that if a town board member participates remotely, they don't count towards a quorum, but they can participate in discussion. They can vote. I thought that was odd.
I think it's very odd.
Yeah.
I agree. I would think if you are, we've been able to, especially in the middle of a global pandemic, it seems a bit wrong, to be polite, just plain wrong to have somebody participating safely via Zoom and not count them as part, just.
Really, the Town of Brookfield ordinance existed before COVID, and it was really intended to address the town board member that was on vacation but still wanted to participate. It wasn't intended to address the pandemic. I think it makes a lot of sense to say that if we've got an emergency declaration or a pandemic or something going on, that we can choose to have the entire council participate remotely. I think that makes a lot of sense. But then we got to put some thought into, on our normal day-to-day activities, do we want to allow people to participate remotely? And if so, do we want to limit to one council member or a certain number of council members? Another thing that was interesting in the Town of Brookfield ordinance that's very subjective is it said something like that the person couldn't vote if it was important to see the facial expressions of the person giving testimony or something like that.
Oh my God.
Well, that was my argument for having real meetings. I will say, I do
Right.
think the Zoom meetings were not productive in the sense that I don't think it was fair to a lot of people. But I think we've kind of learned that there's no reason we shouldn't have everyone present in some way, because I think everyone adds to the conversation. And it should just be a matter of course. The only downsides I could think of, and we don't have that problem on this council, is someone was elected to office and chose never to go to a meeting, and then put the burden on us to constantly accommodate them, their presence, so they might, and so I don't know if that's the subjective problem, but
Well, the one thing I'll say, Jim, is, I think we just had one meeting that was everybody participating virtually last April.
Right.
And it was very much a housekeeping meeting. It was like declaration of emergency and stuff
Right.
like that. And to me, that makes a lot of sense to do that. And
Yeah.
I think you probably want to include some kind of emergency situation, such as if City Hall doesn't exist anymore because it got hit by a tornado or something like
I'm sure
that.
it's in the list here. You could have a situation where physical presence just isn't that practical. And
Right.
They may be running it out of the comm center in Waukesha, but it would be participating. But my feeling is that we should, since the technology is there, we should be physically meeting. If someone can't be present and wants to be in contact, they should be able to do that.
One person?
I mean, we could be as specific as we want, right? I mean, can we say, like, I mean, realistically, can we say we can have one council member via Zoom, or you are able to be remote in one meeting per year or something per person? You know what I mean? I mean, we can be specific.
You
Like,
can.
I would think that would stop encouraging one person from missing everything, but if you say,
and
you know,
it's
I mean,
never happened. But
right, but if you have that in place, at least we have a standard and we can always move off of that, but
I think in general, we're all kind of obnoxious people who want to show up and give our opinions, if given the chance.
Ultimately, council members are accountable to their constituency, and you start missing every meeting, and that starts to become an issue.
But if it's on the books then too, then you have some accountability to and discouraging people from joining who might not
Right.
intend to really be here.
I'm a huge proponent of in-person meetings.
Yeah.
I think the way our state is and the level of granularity we have in our government versus a lot of other states. I mean, just look at the quantity of our accountability. Everyone's got, we all have like 3 or 4 throats to choke over like where a sidewalk goes, whether it's county, state, city. I mean, it's our responsibility to be here. So I think anything that we put in place because we're providing ourselves a certain amount of access to our constituents by being here in person that not everybody has. I mean, our library was shut down during COVID. And people that would normally show up and say, hey, and grab you by the shirt sleeve as you walk in, say, here's how I feel about this, couldn't even get to the library to use the computer to give us an email or get to. So I think anything that we did outside of a emergency situation to expand our ability to not be here and accountable would be a mistake.
I would agree. I'm a huge fan of 3 dimensions, and I think that's one of the things we've learned. Hopefully more than that during this time, but how important it is to actually be present physically as much as possible. And I would think that any discussion of like Zoom meetings is really only as sort of something to give us guidance should we have to face this again. Because it was pretty surreal, you know, to talk about like marking off 6 feet between us and plexiglass and all of that. And so I do think it is absolutely the preference, and maybe a structure is important, but I would not be comfortable with people just choosing to do a Zoom meeting outside of some kind of, you know, crisis, like a tornado hit City Hall and we can't meet there, or a pandemic or something beyond exceptional needs. You just need to be here.
So I'm hearing no interest in providing a council member, a plan commissioner, a public works committee member to participate in an important meeting when they happen to be traveling for business on that meeting day.
I think once in a while it's helpful. I mean, I guess at Public Works we've had it.
Yep.
And we've allowed it to be part of the quorum.
Correct.
I mean, if there is an important issue that's coming up, I would think that alderman, alderwoman would potentially make the request that that issue, if appropriate, be delayed until they can be present. It's not a
Well, being
huge
the
deal.
person that was absent at the budget meeting last November, I don't think we could put that off a month because I could come back later on. But I also didn't want to infect anybody with COVID because that's what I had. So, past tense.
So Phil, I think we're talking about building something in for emergencies,
Yeah,
for
right.
pandemics and stuff, but I'm talking about just day-to-day.
regular order, yeah.
Regular meetings. I don't know. I mean, someone could have the flu, right? and not want to be here to get people sick.
Although if you are sick, yeah. Yeah.
Well, putting structure in place makes sense, and again, it can be something that can be built into a framework so we have it to rely on, but it certainly isn't something like, yeah, I'm going to plan my trip to Jamaica, and oh yeah, there's a council meeting, but I'll just zoom in. That's a bit of an issue. But I think, again, I think most people take their council or their committee work pretty seriously, but it is important maybe to have a structure.
I'll comment that, yeah, no, I agree. One thing I think we're all kind of trying to avoid is a potential where you see, boy, you know, there's going to be probably likely a 4-3 split on this particular big contentious city issue. And, you know, if we just schedule it when Phil's on vacation, it'll save us all a lot of grief, and maybe we can beat up on Matt and get it to swing our way.
Well, then you have a tie and the mayor breaks.
I'm good with that.
I've been involved in a few in the last 12 years, and we've done our best to avoid a situation where we're doing stuff outside of a full presence and representation of the body. So I don't think we have to. We do have to worry about that because we're not always going to all be nice people here, right? But I think writing something in where you start creating allowances for people to be casually absent is not a good thing. And so I think if we had some framework or an example from a different community where it was based primarily on a state of emergency of some sort, that would be my personal preference. And if not that, I believe, and I remember this predates me, but I believe there was a vote, because there was some contentious issues before me being here, right? Where somebody, I think it was Alderman Miss Kelly, was given like pre-authorization to call in on a vote. And I'd like to see that kind of accommodation made, to be able to be made on situations where an elder person requests it, based on a potential for a meeting. If that's, in other words, you know, hey, listen, because how are you going to weigh in on where every tree is going to be on a landscaping plan for a development if you can barely see what's going on in your? But if it's something like an issue that's been brewing for 9 months about whether or not we're going to have public water downtown, and that's one of the things you've been fighting for, and you're away on a funeral, I don't think that's fair to not be representative of your one of 7 votes. You know what I mean? So
some kind of restricted language that would allow in a rare circumstance
so without an ordinance, the city made accommodations for that in the late 90s for sure, or early 2000s.
I think it was 2000s, yeah, if I remember it.
Yeah, so I'd be comfortable with that because I think you should not miss something where your opinion's extremely well known, and there's very slim chance of the fact that just because a petitioner or a particular topic got delayed by a month, and then that goes from your being able to be here and not being able to be here, it shouldn't swing whether or not you're able to vote. You know, so I mean I don't know how slippery of a gate that is to keep open and shut, but somebody must have that accommodation someplace.
Yeah, we'll do some research.
That could just be enough of a thing to say, well, then just means anytime you want to be gone, you can be gone. But
that's what,
you know what I mean?
That's why I was saying, like, if you said not to happen more than once a year or something, you know, just with the intention that you're not going to have more than one emergency.
How do you restrict democracy?
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
Well, no, I mean, if you're having life crises where you're having emergencies every month, then maybe.
I guess if you could search for something like that, see if it exists.
That was my thought, though.
I get it.
In the restrictive.
All right.
To a number.
Very great.
We've all had enough discussion on this one.
Yeah.
I think that's good direction, and we can work
absolutely with that. Never, but sometimes.
Yes. Oh, that's exactly what I heard. All right. Moving on to 10, mayor's report. No mayor's report. Number 11, new business. A, funding a survey at 30% design plans and cost estimates for the proposed Genesee Street, Oakwood Drive to Carriage Hills Drive, and Nagawicka Road to Waterleaf Subdivision Path to Bark River Drive. Recreational paths to be performed in 2021.
Yeah, so, we are looking at two potential path projects to include in the budget for 2022. And in order for us to have the opportunity to do those, we would need to do surveying in 2021. The two paths are, the first one's up on Genesee Street from Oakwood Drive to the Carriage Hills subdivision. If you recall, the council in last year's budget, well, in the budget for this year, considered a path on Oakwood Drive it would extend a couple blocks to the west. And the council's direction was to move it to the budget for 2022. In the meantime, we did have a public informational meeting. Met a lot of resistance to that path from the people adjacent to it, and suggestions to move the path to Highway C up to Carriage Hills, because it would still meet our objective of providing access to that subdivision up in that area to downtown. So we did draw that up real conceptually. We mailed that to the people along the road on Highway C and received much better feedback, and a lot of people anxious to see that. So we would need to get survey data to move forward with that, and the thought is also to move forward with 30% complete plans so we could have a better cost estimate come budget time. And then with regards to Nagawicka Road, kind of the same thing, but we haven't done any public information meeting with that, and so the thought is that with the 30% plans, we could conduct some public informational meetings on that. The cost from SEH, our city engineer, for each of the project is $13,000. So we are looking at a $26,000 expenditure. In my memo to the council, I identified two things. First of all, our paving project this year is estimated to come in about $20,000 under budget. And then also, we had a $25,000 expenditure approved for a bicycle and pedestrian accommodation plan that was anticipated to be done largely by a consultant. And instead, it's largely being done by the committee, and specifically the committee chairperson is doing the lion's share of the work, and our city engineer is just doing some supplemental work to assist with it with regards to mapping and exhibits and things like that. So it is anticipated that at a minimum we'll save $10,000 off that budget item. And so that would free up the funds if the council did want to move forward with these two surveys and 30% design efforts.
Well, I'll make that motion since I'm with Public Works.
I'll second it.
All right, we have first and second. Any discussion?
So I do want to comment on the Highway C. When they say it still provides that neighborhood with access, there's a road called Evelyn, which I think it's Evelyn, isn't it?
No, Evelyn is way over by Summit.
No.
We talking about
Phil.
You're talking about going to the west?
No, it's across the street to the west. Yeah, it's
Arlington?
Arlington.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so that road would provide this. This is what came out from the Oakwood people who don't want the path in front of their house. But that road provides that subdivision with almost better access to downtown. Using that road, because it's not a very busy street, and then with a crossing on Highway C to this path that's extended, and it also picks up Carriage Hills. I will also, to be fair, I know that Mr. Jens is quite concerned about the path, so there are people that are concerned about it. And the one thing is this would provide us with some better information to talk to them. He has some great landscaping there, and we're going to have to deal with that.
There are, if memory serves, how many impacted people on the east side? There's only like 5 properties,
there's
right?
only really 3 residents.
Three if you, the church.
And
Oh,
then
yeah.
Carriage Hills land is not a problem.
Right, so just,
You have
yeah.
two, there are two residents that are concerned.
Oh, and the one with the nice
With the-
landscape,
yeah,
yeah.
And the grade, and this is where Mike needs a little time to think about how is he gonna
Gonna
propose.
go under.
He's gonna propose something that can accommodate what's there and not destroy
Yeah.
what he's created, so.
I think it's a good plan.
So, and it's in the long-term plan.
Yeah.
I have to say.
And you don't know what's going to happen on Oakwood with the St. John's development, and like you mentioned.
Well, and that's the other thing, our plan, we want to have these things in place so the developer can put some of the stuff in.
Mhm.
And Oakwood Road, if that subdivision develops, that's a la Seaman, we're going to have some public baths of it as part of it.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll comment that this is, it's rare you get somebody to say, hey, take a project out of my district and put it in someone else's. But since this was primarily Matt's, and it was something to really be a connector for the northwest quadrant of the city, which is all of District 7. For me, a lot of the subdivisions are designed in a way to discourage cut-through traffic. So we've got these loops and bends, and so people don't necessarily always understand north-south and what the shortest route is. But I'm kind of smack dab in the middle of Laurel Circle. And it doesn't make intuitive sense when you're in my driveway to walk up toward Bostrom Park and go over to Hillcrest and then down to Arlington and over. It costs you just about 1/10 of a mile longer than it does to go the other route along Oakwood. But this connecting path here gives you a crossing on Highway C that gives you some good, way better line of sight for the hill. And that, if anyone's ever voted in this city, you know how nasty that intersection is by Christ the King.
Yep.
So there's a longer term fix that's going to have to come in
And that's
place there.
Public Works is
Those roads are offset, and there's all sorts of problems that need to be fixed there. But the line of sight is horrible. This gives something that would happen next year as opposed to 10 years from now. And it gives a way for people to walk a wagon or a kid on a trike and get downtown. I mean, it's beautiful. And it makes tons of sense. And the bonus is Carriage Hills gets connected with something,
Right.
and they're set up for it. I think this is a huge win.
Well, it does create a loop with Carriage Hills and even West Shore Drive.
It does. No, this is
A safe loop.
it's all the brilliance that comes out of public interaction and having a meeting, and that's the same reason that this should be tied to something on Nagawicka Road as well, because some investment in there for some plans, you might see some alterations and some ideas that come out that are just as good. So I'm all in favor of it as well. You got a second, right?
Yep.
All right.
All right.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to 11B. Placement of citizens' comments on agenda per the request of Alderman Valdez.
Yeah, there's no motion for like a decision or anything, but I'm seeking clarification. I've had more than one frustrated citizen contact me. Mostly this is at Plan Commission meetings where the citizens' comments have been either restricted to only items on the agenda or items splitting consent and items on the agenda. And mostly I need to like be able to answer that, and I couldn't. So I went back and looked at agendas so I wouldn't sound stupid. November of 2020, December of 2020, January and February of this year, there was one on the Plan Commission comments section for citizens. It was just one citizens' comments with no restrictions listed, like only items on the agenda or splitting consent agenda or agenda-only items. But then March, April, May, June, and July of this year, citizens' comments have been restricted and divided. The first set of citizens' comments have been listed on the Plan Commission for the consent agenda only early, and then there's been several items on the agenda meeting-wise, and then citizens' comments open up again, but only on agenda items, which then, in my understanding, having not attended, that if a citizen had a concern about something that might not necessarily be on the agenda, they can never speak to it before the Plan Commission. I'm just wondering, I'm going to guess there's a reason. And so, yeah, I was just seeking clarification on that because it has been something that I have received questions on, and I never really, I don't know, looked at it carefully, but then I did because I've had a couple people call me very frustrated. So I don't know. Why are they split?
So make sure I understand the question, because maybe I can answer, but maybe Molly's the better one to answer it. Why are they split? Why is there citizens' comments for consent agenda, and why is there citizens' comments for the rest of the business?
No, yeah, but also, yeah, why the change? It's only the consent agenda early, and then the meeting goes on for quite a while, and then citizens' comments opens up again. So I don't understand, I know that there's probably a reason, I just couldn't think of one. And then I'm also wondering about the ability for our citizens to express a concern about something that isn't necessarily on the agenda, like we do it here.
Can I answer the first
So,
one?
yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll answer the first one.
Oh,
You wanna-
I want
I'm a
to.
little lost.
No,
I mean,
so
I know how it works in my head.
I'm not going
but-
to say stuck, but I've been on the Plan Commission commission for a while, and Kent introduced the change to segregate the items that were on the consent agenda for comments from the rest of the agenda items. I don't know, maybe second month as mayor, and I said, if you do nothing else as mayor, you're one of the best mayors we've had in a long time. Because we'd get some poor guy that was sitting here to get a sign approved for a customer. Just a color change and a font change for a sign like Petco or something. And he would sit through 2.5 hours of gun club debate. And then for open comments. And then it's like, okay, items on the consent agenda. It's like, yeah, I need this sign approved. this poor guy.
Usually doesn't even talk.
This poor guy's here for, he's getting his $35 commission, and his kids are asleep when he gets home. So that is why the consent agenda items are segregated.
That makes total sense to me.
It's
And then
beautiful.
But that's been that way since, like Tim said, maybe the second meeting since I've been
years
mayor.
ago.
So that's not new.
Yeah, it's just I went back in and looked and saw that it was divided, but would it make sense then to have the consent agenda comments first, followed immediately by citizens' comments on items on or off the agenda, so that they don't have to sit through parts of a meeting?
The whole idea is about it's laid out in a sense to be efficient and to make sure citizens' comments always have an opportunity to participate, right? And at the appropriate time, right? Because sometimes, there are special circumstances where it gets tweaked even a third way, and that's like when we have a special presentation.
Right.
Sometimes you want to make sure that the new information is provided to the citizens that are here listening before they make their comments, and then bring that person up later if you're following. So the whole, any way we have it set up is to maximize accurate citizens' participation on any topic for that matter, and in an order of where the information is made available to them to make the best comments they can.
Gotcha. Okay. I just have had calls and people have been confused, and that makes total sense to me. My other last question is just about, it's always about only items on the agenda. So does that mean, because then people can't talk about something that isn't on the
I
agenda.
always say for items on and off the agendas, but I know it through the last 3 clerks, I have noticed that the words do get
It doesn't,
changed.
yeah, it doesn't say, it just says
But
agenda
I mean, that's how
items.
I've always interpreted it, and so that's the way I always do it. But I don't disagree with you that
Yeah.
I think the words on the agenda have
I do
changed
tell people,
a little bit. I don't even remember what they all say exactly.
The
if
Plan
they want to
Commission
come and make
agenda
a
is provided by
comment,
email.
and it's not on the agenda, I guess if they stand up and say something, you can hardly gavel them down
No,
instantly.
no.
But I say, it's unfair to other people who may have an opposite view of you that didn't know you were going to say that at the meeting. So to be fair to those other people, that's why we don't comment on things, we don't add things to the agenda because of citizen comments. We can't always answer questions.
No, we can't. And that part,
Sometimes
yeah.
that's one, and then they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so.
And I do think it does help
realize-
when we explain it, so that's partly why I brought it up,
Yeah.
so that people listening and watching can understand that it's not a nefarious intent. It's actually to make it run more smoothly, and the poor person, and I've been there, where you're waiting for, like, I just
I
need
was
it
like,
up
oh
or
my
down.
God, why didn't someone think of that sooner?
Yeah.
So I'll make a suggestion, it's because you don't do it every plan commission meeting or every council meeting, but when there's clearly we know Mary knows the rules, but when there's a crowd that is talking something, you read your script.
I do. I read it.
Mayor Atwell has a script, and that wouldn't be a bad thing to tag on to a link for the agenda online, as far as, and if we want to tweak it, that'd be good, because you go over all sorts of stuff about, one of the first best things you can do is contact your elder person, and you can email it to the clerk. You do go through all that, so I don't know. I'm not, because I know the rules, I'm not going to fault someone for feeling like they showed up and it
Can always
wasn't
call
all
and
fully
ask.
explained.
Right?
I think we could resolve the issue by the second citizens' comments could just be citizens' comments pertaining to items other than the consent agenda.
Right.
Sure.
There you go.
Yeah, and that will make it easier. And thank you. I just wanted it to be made clear, because I think it helps people understand that we really are trying to include them in.
Absolutely. And in that vein, the other comment that I occasionally get is, well, you should only let people that live in the city comment, comments. Well,
Yep.
I don't choose to do that. If you're here and you want to make a comment, I don't care if you live in Alaska, you can make a comment, but we need to be efficient.
Right.
We try not to repeat where our best we can.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to C, creation of minute taker recording secretary position. Are you, Molly? Or Tom?
So last month, we had thanked Accurate Business Communications for their long-standing partnership with the city. With that comes kind of an extra strain on the staff. The city of Delafield is a very involved community, and other municipalities have different types of meetings where maybe all committees will meet in one night. Here we have 7, 8 night meetings plus several morning meetings, and it gets to be a lot for staff that's already putting in 40 hours a week, and then to have to do the night meeting plus then all the time that it takes to do the minutes limits what we can do during the regular business hours. Like for tonight's meeting, it's going to be 2 hours. It's going to take me at least 2 hours after the meeting to kind of re-listen and make sure that I have everything accurate. Even if the minutes are limited and are not super detailed, we still want to make sure that what we're putting out there is accurate. The preparation before the meeting for me to just prepare the minutes can be, I've got it down, it's about a half an hour for me, but for another staff member it might take a little bit longer. So there's a lot of time that we put into this, and unfortunately we don't have the staff to continue to do this, and Sally and ABC has always done a really good job of kind of filling that gap for us, but with them being gone, I know I personally am feeling the drain a little bit with having to do the common council meetings and the plan commission meetings, just because those tend to be a little bit more involved. Our office staff is stepping up and we are covering it, but it would be great if we could hopefully, and I don't know if that person exists, but if they do, it would be great if we could find them. If we hire from within, we would actually be saving money. ABC charged us $55 an hour. And again, that's that time that I stated where it's the meeting, the before prep and the after prep, and just kind of going over their billing for the past several years is not any different from what I'm, from what we do versus what they, Sally would do time-wise. So the expectation would be, the same, and that ends up being about 20 hours a month. But that also keeps it below the benefit, where we would have to provide benefits or prorated benefits. So if we were to do a 25 to 30 per hour wage for somebody who is qualified, and if less qualified, maybe knock it down a little bit. And if we have to train, take those all into consideration. But, if we've had the service, I'm not kind of asking for anything that we haven't already been paying for, and we'll be saving money, and it will really help lighten the load upstairs for us. And I don't want staff to get burned out. We're really happy up there right now. Like, it's a great group, and I don't want to lose anybody for that. So I don't think Tom can handle another.
Tom can handle anything.
I think I'm all for it. When Sally was here, what I really liked is it was almost more objective. Not that there's anything wrong with our paid staff, but they just focused on recording what was being said at the meeting. There was no editorializing, thoughts about how it impacted their job.
She was particularly good at keeping the various chairs on
And they were very
topic
Yeah.
and
She
not
was.
allowing discussions to
No, and then
venture where they're not supposed to go if it's not on the agenda. And
right, she was. So, I mean, it was a unique service, and obviously, they retired and didn't compensate enough to keep going. So, but I think if we could find someone that's exclusively what they did, that would be great.
It's your budget. I mean, make it work.
Yeah,
I'm all
it's-
for it. I mean, whatever you think is.
Can you find
the
someone
best.
would be my big
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Is
what Jackie
someone
said.
out there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cast out the lines.
It's a common position advertised in like Washington D.C. and other areas out there. It's less so here, but
Yeah.
fingers crossed that
I think it makes
if it's out
great
there, we
sense.
can find somebody.
We're going to advertise willing to train too, so with regards to Robert's rules and whatnot. and
Do you need a
parliamentary
motion on?
procedure.
Do you need a
Huh?
motion on this?
I don't think we do. We've got well, we should. It's a creation of a position. So yes,
A non-benefit, 20-hour-a-month position,
yes.
part-time.
part-time. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes.
I just have a quick question. Are we limiting that then to the 20 hours a month or part-time non-benefit for the motion?
Yeah,
Both.
Yes.
that's what I agreed with.
We said limited to 20 hours a month. That's average, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I get it.
Okay, we'll move on to 11D, approval of vouchers payable report for reports dated 7/16/2021 through 8/11/2021 in the amount of $346,138.05 for accounts payable and $165,616.11 for payroll.
Move to approve the voucher list.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Who had the second?
Jackie.
I remember when you used to just say approve voucher list. I didn't have to read all those numbers.
Try to stop.
Okay, 12, report of city officials, city administrator. 1, Olive Garden update.
Yeah, a couple of these have already been hit on already at this meeting, but with regards to Olive Garden, we were able to get in touch with them. They had let their landscaping go a little bit with their grass and stuff. We got some of that cut down and the weeds cut down. But they do have the construction fencing up. The backhoe showed up today, and they had been telling us all along that demolition is scheduled for mid-August, so we're excited to see that progressing, and I understand that they are looking to open for business sometime in the first half of next year, which is exciting.
I'm sad to see Perkins go. It was a great restaurant, but they were always my example of how not to do rooftop mechanicals to be seen from I-94.
That'll be an improvement.
Yes, it will.
That was covered.
The second one we already hit on tonight. We're excited to see a new residential subdivision go in. We've had a lack of inventory for quite a while now, and this will give us an opportunity to see some net new construction with the Seatman's plan to start here in the beginning of September. They have a goal of getting the first lift of asphalt done this October or November, which would put them in position for houses to start in the spring. So that's exciting. Gun club update, that was also hit on. The main point I wanted to make is that they did not apply for the August Plan Commission meeting, which had been anticipated. And now since then, I've also talked to Brian Doro, and he said that it's quite likely that they may not apply for September as well. He said they're trying to get all their ducks in a row. He specifically mentioned some kind of an environmental assessment that they're working on. So stay tuned to that, but I just wanted to get the word out so we don't get a lot of phone calls at City Hall wondering why the gun club's not on the August agenda, or so that we don't get a lot of people showing up at the August meeting expecting the gun club to be on the agenda. Lastly, our 2021 paving program is largely complete. You may have seen that the Fish Hatchery Sports Complex parking lot is repaved. It was nicely done. We made some drainage improvements. You shouldn't see that large pond in the parking lot that has been there for many years near the shelter. The only thing that's left to be done over there is they still need to do the gravel shouldering. And then the paving on Lakewood Court is also complete with the gravel shouldering done. Turned out very good. So very pleased with the paving program. I think the contractor got the whole thing done in about 9 days, which is great. So, any questions on any of those?
Is that including, those are just these projects, or it's not all of the streets?
Those are the only two main items in the project this year. It was a small project. There was also a few miscellaneous patches here and there throughout the city.
Okay.
That's all I have for an update.
Great. City Clerk?
Just the filing of the Department of Revenue's Form SL 311, which is the video service report or provider report, was completed. It's really exciting.
Nice. All right, C, City Treasurer's Report, June 2021 Treasurer's Report. Okay, we'll move on to 13, Council requests for future agenda items. Any requests?
Tree Board at their last meeting made an adjustment to the caliper inch. Molly, if you could include that request from Common Council on the next agenda.
Sounds good. All right, number 14, adjournment. We are now adjourned, seeing no further business at 8:57. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
The electric company's recutting their right of way.
Yeah, I need to do that. Okay.